Hey guys, welcome back to the neighborhood.
Today, we're taking a look at the Shozy Form 1.1.
I've already taken a look at a bunch of other Shozis, and this review has been up on the blog for a while, so it's about time that I got to this one.
By the way, there's a blog where I post written reviews if you want to check that out.
The link will be in the description. Anyhow, the Shozy Form 1.1. Let's get into it. So let's talk about the Shozy Form 1.1. I didn't really have a lot of expectations when I received a box from Farsal the Wizard and these IMs were inside. In fact, they were one of the last IMs that I auditioned out of that particular box. But boy were they a surprise. So much so that I ended up trading Farsal another IM so that I could keep them. So I actually like these quite a bit, but mostly after some tinkering. And let me tell you, tinkering I did. I tried so many tips on this set, oh so many tips, and generally I was somewhat disappointed with the tone and overall presentation. Initially, it was just somewhat flat and ultimately rather boring in the end. The stock tip silicones were comfortable and sounded the best out of the box, but at the end of the day, they brought the driver too close to my eardrum and pushed the overall presentation too far forward, and the sonics sounded as if they were not developed properly. Like a fine wine, the 1.1 benefits from letting the driver breathe a bit, so JVC spiral dots were the answer for me for this IM. In fact, with JVC spiral dots, the sound develops quite nicely. With spiral dots, this may be one of my favorite IMs under $100, but without them, I don't know if I would really recommend it. So either invest in JVC spiral dots with this guy or be prepared to be somewhat disappointed, as they are less engaging without them. So let's talk about the rest of the build. The Shozy Form 1.1 is a hybrid consisting of a single BA and a beryllium coated dynamic driver. It comes with a cloth covered cable that falls in the fine category, both with regard to build and to sound. It isn't the softest cable, and it is slightly stiff, but it's not overly so at the same time. Overall, I would call it a nice, usable, functional cable with a bead for a chin slider. While it really isn't my cup of tea, I wouldn't judge you for using it either. With regard to the actual shell of the IM itself, I really like it. They're quite small, lightweight, have an appropriate angle and depth in my ear canal, and fit perfectly within the concha of my ear. They are composed of what appears to be a one-piece all-black shell with a multicolored flake that is somewhat understated. But also, these flakes give this IM some pizzazz in the right light. They are supremely comfortable to wear for long listening sessions, and I barely feel them in my ears. Sonically, I really enjoy the presentation overall, but there are a few caveats. In general, the Shozy Form 1.1 produces meaty and lush tones which are delivered smoothly. Timbre could be described as natural with earthy and woody qualities to it. It's not overly resolving, but it also resolves pretty damn well. I'd classify these IMs in the smooth operator category. Having said that, there is a pretty sizable peak around 8K. Perhaps the spiral dots that I favored limited the impact of this peak, but honestly, it didn't really bother me on 99% of tracks. I was more bothered by the dip around 6.5K, which produced a weirdly underemphasized response on guitars for some rock music. For example, on the song Crushed by Buck Cherry, there was a lead guitar part that seemed more recessed than usual. The effect was also apparent on Molly 16 Candles by the band Sponge. But I did not notice this recession on 95% of music that I tested. With some consistency, I did notice that the balanced armature on this set was low-key sensitive. But this was easily remedied by employing a low gain on an IEM appropriate amplifier, or utilizing an Hi-Fi IE match otherwise. The bass also has some potential difficulties depending upon your listening preferences. There is a decent amount of sub-bass that mixes into the overall bass response fairly well, but it does have a pretty steep auditory drop-off at, let's say, around 40 Hz, as there appears to be no sub-bass response below this region to my ears. So there isn't as much sub-bass here as, say, something like a TFC No. 3 or a KZ ZSX. Instead, sub-bass is closer to the Moondrop Starfield or KXXS. There's also a pretty significant mid-bass hump that I wouldn't say bleeds into the mids, but I would say it hazes into it for sure. But it does end up becoming fatiguing to me a bit if I listen to the 1.1 all day. Despite these issues, the BA driver here delivers a certain amount of clarity and detail without ever being harsh or sibilant to my ears. The low end is very satisfying, even if it lacks a little bit of sub-bass, and I found that this set did particularly well for the metal genre, featuring guttural guitar rhythms. Does this IEM chug? Hell yeah it does. It also lays down a fairly holographic soundstage with spiral dots. Transients are particularly good on this set as well, thanks in part to its BA and beryllium-coated driver configuration. In general, with spiral dots, the 1.1 reminds me of the Blonde BL03 with specific regard to warmth, tonality, and soundstage. For those individuals that take a look at the Blondes and say, hey, I like the full sound, but I wish that it had a bit better resolution, a smidge more treble, and more sub-bass presence, then I'd look no further than the Shozy Forum 1.1. To me, the Shozy 1.1 represents a great option for those that love the Blonde BL03 house sound, but want an upgrade. The soundstage may ultimately not be quite as forced wide as the Blonde, but these certainly have better technical capabilities within their soundstage. There's less smearing than the Blondes have, better articulation of instruments in space, less mid-bass bleed, enhanced sub-bass performance, and increased overall clarity in comparison. To compare with the Shozy Forum 1.4, go ahead and hop over to that review, which is already posted on the YouTubes by me. I'll place a link in the description below to make it easy for you to access. So, do I recommend the Shozy Forum 1.1? As long as you're willing to invest in some additional JVC spiral dots, I most certainly do. In fact, I think it does some unique things, with its earthy tone melodies, detail balanced armature and beryllium dynamic driver design, and relaxing sound signature. And before you go, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and check out the neighborhood at all its other access locations, including the Discord, the blog, Instagram, and Twitter. There's also a Patreon. The Patreon is only $1.50 a month, and it will get you access to early written blog reviews from me. And with that, I'm out for now.